Good morning. Hope everyone is having a good day today. I'll wait for some. Hi, Kristen. All right. All right, today we're going to be, hi Kathy. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about finishing up the New York Beauty Create Your Own Adventure. And I'm, really excited about the pictures that I'm going to share with you in just a couple of minutes. I'm going to wait for a few more people to come on before I do that. And we're going to talk about the side setting triangles and corner triangles today, and do that in various methods. But first I want to talk just a little bit about how we're going to finish this off. So we've set the June 29th show to share whatever pictures and whatever you have put on the forum, or have sent to Dee's Saturday Sampler. And if you've got Instagram and you put the picture of your quilt or your blocks up on Instagram, then hashtag Dee's Saturday Sampler, and those will come up there, and we can I'll be able to share some of those as well and put up your pictures. I have received a few this week, a couple of finished items, and I really encourage you. Kristen has made the prizes for this well worth putting up your finished top, and we're going to be looking at the finished tops, and one of the prizes is for what we feel is an original design. And we did this simply to look at a chance for you to challenge yourself and say, yes, I can do this. I can take a block or several blocks, and I can arrange them and put them together so that I have a quilt that's my own, more or less original. You didn't design the blocks itself, but the quilt you did. And just to push yourself to do that if you've never done that before. And I'm really excited, from the emails and the text and stuff that I've received from some of you, that you've really embraced that, and that's to me, that's thrilling, because you've taken that on. And then the second prize is going to be just a random drawing for anyone who has posted their finished quilts. And I know that a lot of you have already finished the top or pretty close to it and got your blocks done, and you use the design that Kristen did, and or you've used a design you've seen on another pattern, or on Pinterest, or wherever you've gone to see that. And so they've been beautiful. So let me share with you some of these pictures and see what we've got going here. I am missing some of those pictures. I just put them up and now they've disappeared. Isn't that strange? Okay. Well, I'm not sure that I can show them today. Let's see. Nope, that's a wedding, flower picture. I don't know how that got there. All right, I can't show you those pictures today, so you're going to have to wait till next week, and I'll show all of those to you, because somewhere in this whole thing, I have lost them, and I so apologize, because there were very beautiful ones finished, and especially there was one that the quilting on it, because I know that I've gotten some questions about the quilting, and someone put up, I think it was Sandy, put up a quilt, and that she had taken each block and quilted it separately. It was very beautiful, and I'm sorry that somewhere along the way I've lost that those pictures and wherever they went in this. So anyway, I will have them again up for next week. So now finishing, I'm going to drop down to my table camera and we're going to take a look at this. I've tried to lay this out and I'm sorry that it's not overly visible. I'm going to try to move things in. This would be the top left hand corner up here. And then the second row would start here with the setting triangle right there. And then, you know, a block and another, you know, the next block coming in and so on until I got to the setting triangle that you don't see over here, but it looks very much like that. And I want to talk a little bit about setting triangles and how those work. This block that we designed for this quilt is going to finish, which means it's going to be sewn in finished at 8 inches. So how do you cut those side triangles? I think I've shared with you guys before that math sort of gives me a rash. And math is not something that comes naturally to me. But I do know that to get to know what the side triangles for a 8-inch finished quilt would be, you multiply the size of your finished quilt block times 1.414, and then you add 1.25 inch for your side triangles. That's hard for me, at least, to remember that all the time. And so and then for the end blocks, which doesn't necessarily hold true on this particular quilt put on point, because it comes out so that these are basically side triangles that fit into end triangles. But normally when you sew a quilt that has setting triangles, you have one size for the setting triangles, and then you have another size for the top corner. And that corner, when you're doing your math, is your finished size divided by 1.141 plus 7/8 inch for your corner. And I know that math because I looked it up and I've heard those numbers and I've written them down 100 times. But I'm going to tell you right now, because we are so fortunate to have all of that, the easiest thing would probably be going to a quilt site. There's quilt math books out there, or there's Pinterest with charts. And so I'm going to give you now the numbers that you need for this particular quilt for your setting triangles. And your setting triangles, you would need to cut a square that is 12 5/8 inch square. Then you're going to take that square and cut it on the diagonal twice, and that will give you your setting blocks. And if you are creating your quilt to have as many blocks and set it in the same way that Kristen did hers, that's the only one that you would need. But if you are creating this quilt and creating your own design, and you need that corner size, you would then cut that corner size a 6 5/8 inch square and cut that in half. But I want to talk a little bit about that, and the reason for setting triangles being cut on the diagonal twice is so that this outer edge of your setting triangle is without bias. So you're cutting, that on this way across there, so your bias is on the inside. And when you're sewing those strips or pieces together, when you get to your block and sewing the next one, you need to be really careful as you sew, because this side right here and this side right here is bias. And when you pull and stretch that as bias, you get a stretch, and then you get those waves in there. And when you go to quilt it, it makes it a lot tougher in the quilting process when that happens. And then for the corner triangle, you are cutting a smaller square so that it fits along, the top of your 8-inch block. And this way you want the bias on the inside. So as you cut it on the, across your square once, then your bias is in the center and your corners are not bias. And so that's helpful in the sewing process. Now, if for whatever reason you don't have enough fabric, or you cut your side triangles as half square triangles, if you have bias on the outside edge of your quilt, if this becomes the outside edge and it's bias, a lady sent me an email asking some questions, and she had already come up with the answer for it. And that is, it would be a good idea as you are sewing your quilt together to put a stay stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, so that it doesn't stretch, it doesn't move on you, and when you get to your quilt put together, you don't have that wavy quilt thing going on in the midst of that, because that's when we find ourselves getting into trouble. And it may not be trouble at the time we're sewing it, but it's going to become trouble when we finish it. So now I want to check the questions here. Tips are helpful. Thank you. The fabrics on this, I'm just loving the quilt. Paper piece before, and I'm loving this. Well, Janice, I'm excited that you are loving it, because especially with the freezer paper method, there's all that paper and all that stuff is just not there, but you have this wonderful perfectly sewn block when you're done, and it's kind of wonderful that way. And I do different blocks, and I just use that method. We can have a picture show. It would be fun. Absolutely. And we will have a picture, because right before this all started, I had a little camera issue, and maybe me messing with it with my cameras, those other pictures disappeared somewhere. But I had put them all into so that I could show you, and now they're not there, and I apologize. All right, I'm seeing lots of hellos, and I'm so glad, it's so fun to see these names keep coming across. I love it, because you feel like friends already, even though I only see a tiny little picture in the corner and your comments. All right, so finishing your quilt and the setting triangles. If you have any hints or thoughts, and you want to share them, and I'm sorry that my camera just doesn't give you a bigger picture of this. I'm trying to get, the space is kind of small. But if you are following, the size or the shape of the quilt that Kristen first, and it was 50 by 60 or something of that nature, you're not going to have a corner triangle necessarily here, because it's going to go straight across with your setting triangles, because you're putting it on point, and your bias is on the inside. And I would definitely pin on each end as I'm sewing that into that, so that I'm not putting it under the machine and adjusting it as I go, because that's where you have that tendency to pull fabric. And then once you pull it and stretch that fabric and get it out of, I don't even know what the word would be, but getting, stretching it and warping the fabric in that sense. So I would put a pin on each of the corners and sew it so that I'm not pulling on it. I'm letting my feed dogs take it through the machine. But if you are doing, for example, a table runner, or you have a different design where they're not set on point, they're you're going to have the setting triangles and you're going to have a corner triangle, and I want to share that number with you again. So if you have a pencil and you have a piece of paper, I'll give you, at least for these 8-inch finish blocks, for the setting triangles, you would cut a square that is 12 5/8 inches square, and then you're going to cut it diagonally twice. For your corner block, if you are, you end up having a corner block, you're going to cut a square 6 5/8 inches square, and then you are going to cut that diagonally once. All right? And again, anytime you need to know what a setting triangle is, I gave you the math a little bit before, to figure it out for yourself, especially if you have an odd block. Your finish size times 1.414 and plus 1 1/4, and you get the size of your block for your setting triangles. And then your finish size divided by 1.141 plus 7/8, and you get your corner triangle. And that one is cut diagonally once. So those are the math things, but if you're like me and math gives you a rush, or math is not your thing, Pinterest has plenty of charts, and they're quick to find. So, but I do want to give you so that you understand and know how you get to that point. Pam says, I used a 90-degree triangle ruler. I had purchased at some point to cut my setting triangles. Yep, if you've got one of those 90-degree triangles or a setting triangle ruler, those work really great as well. And but if you don't have one of those, it's not something you have to run out and buy for this. They're convenient, and if that convenience works well for you, then by all means use that. So Pam, thank you for mentioning that. When you say cut the block twice, do you mean in both directions? So let's take this block right here. All right, if I was going to cut a square, I am cutting from one diagonal corner to the other, leaving those together, and then going to the other diagonal and cutting straight, on the diagonal that way. So it looks like an X that you're cutting. So that's how you would cut twice on the diagonal, and once you're just going across diagonally one time, and then those two would become your end. And hopefully that answered that question for you on that. All right, let me see. Who gives a flat-out care? Well, somebody who is quilting and wants to do their best and have an end result that they're proud of is who would care. All right. So anyway, back to so next week we'll have a different show. It will not be about the New York Beauty Block or paper piecing, but we're still going to show pictures that you are sending in. And again, please send them to put them up on the forum. Lots of people can do that, and you do not have to be a member of the quilt show to put those into the forum. You can go into the forum and put those up and see other people's questions, their blocks, their quilts. The other thing is that on Pinterest, you can go to Dee's Saturday Sampler, and you would find the pictures that people are hashtagging and putting up there. And then what anyone sends to me to my email address, and my email address is divinequilts@gmail. That is missing from my screen today too, so I must have really messed with something. So that is DeeVineQuilts@gmail.com. So that's my email address, and you can also send your pictures and things to that address. And I'm going to try to see if I can... No, that doesn't do it. That does not do it. So I'll figure what I did and how to get all the stuff back by next week. So, any other questions from anyone? Yeah, Linda, I would agree. Give yourself a treat and be a member, because there's so much information and it's wonderful. I can't find the patterns and templates. Where in the TQS site are they? Jane, you can go to the quiltshow.com, and in the bar across the top it says Learn. Go into Learn and go to D Saturday Sampler and click on Documents and Patterns, and you should be able to find that. And once in a while, I know that Kristen puts a link up, and she may have already done that today. Right after you close this session. Okay. In the chat. Okay. Good to know. All right. Oh, I see what you're saying. I'll find the pictures. You're absolutely right. I will. As soon as I turn this off, I will find them. That is so true. When is the last day of the contest? The last day, on June 29th, on that show, everything that I have received up until the day before, when I can post everything and get it ready for the show, will be the last day. So June 28th is basically the last day you can put up pictures and stuff. Kristen and I will choose the finished quilt top, the one that is an original design, and that will will receive a prize, and we'll let you know who that is. And then the other prize will be for anyone who finishes. That will all go into the pool, and a person will be picked for that. So so June 29th is the big reveal day, and in the meantime, next Saturday I'll have something else for you, and then we'll go from there. And if there's no other questions, can you please type in chat? Let me see if I can do that. Let's see if this works. It did not work, so I'm going to ask Kristen if she can put that in the chat box, my email address. And so me trying to do it messed up something there for me. Anyway, it's not allowing me to put anything in there. So I'll ask Kristen to put that up for you. Okay. All right. I am looking forward to seeing your finished products and have that for next week. And blessings to all of you, and have an absolutely wonderful first week of June.